What if I told you your brain is lying to you? Not in a sinister sci-fi mind control way. No, it's much worse than that. Your brain deceives you every single day, quietly, invisibly, relentlessly. It whispers half-truths, nudges you toward bad decisions, and convinces you that you're in control when you're really not. You think you make rational choices. You think you weigh facts, consider options, and act in your best interest. But in reality, your brain is a master illusionist, crafting stories, bending reality, and leading you astray without you even realizing it. Ever wondered why you're willing to overpay for a product just because it was originally marked higher? Why you'll cling to a bad investment rather than cut your losses? Why your first impression of someone, right or wrong, sticks like glue? These are not random quirks. These are systematic flaws in the way we think, built into the very architecture of the human mind. Daniel Kahneman, a Nobel Prize-winning psychologist, spent decades uncovering the hidden forces that shape our decisions, and what he found is shocking. In his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, he reveals that our brains aren't built for truth. They're built for speed. Inside your head, two systems are constantly at war. One is fast, impulsive, and emotional. The other is slow, logical, and deliberate. You need both to survive, but the problem? The fast one, the reckless one, is in charge far more often than it should be. And that's why you make terrible decisions without realizing it. Imagine you're walking through a park, sipping your coffee, when you spot a familiar face in the crowd. Instantly, before you even think, you recognize them. You don't have to analyze their features or recall their name deliberately. It just happens. Now, contrast that with this. What's 17 times 24? Your brain stutters, doesn't it? There's no instant answer. You have to pause, focus, engage a different kind of thinking. You might even reach for a calculator because this type of problem feels like work. Daniel Kahneman calls these two types of thinking System 1 and System 2, and together they run your entire mental world. System 1 is fast, instinctive, and effortless. It operates below the surface, making quick judgments, detecting patterns, and filling in the gaps before you even realize a decision has been made. It's the system that instantly recognizes emotions, processes language, and spots danger before you can articulate why. It's a survival mechanism, honed over millennia. When our ancestors heard rustling in the bushes, System 1 didn't wait for analysis. It screamed, "Run!" This kept them alive. And today, it's still running the show, helping you read facial expressions, dodge a speeding car, or finish someone's sentence before they do. But here's the catch. System 1 isn't designed for accuracy. It's designed for speed. It takes shortcuts, relies on gut feelings, and jumps to conclusions. And that's where the problems begin. System 2 is the thinker, the deliberate, logical, problem-solving part of your brain. It's the one that helps you analyze investments, plan your week, write an essay, or solve that 17 times 24 problem. It's methodical, it questions assumptions, and it actually tries to get things right. But there's a big problem. System 2 is lazy. It doesn't like to work. It only activates when it's absolutely necessary, and even then, it burns energy fast. So most of the time, it hands over control to System 1. And this is where the world goes off the rails. Because System 1, while fast and efficient, is also reckless, emotional, and biased. It makes snap judgments without checking the facts. It sees patterns where none exist. It overreacts, oversimplifies, and outright lies to you, all while convincing you that you're being perfectly rational. This is why you fall for marketing tricks, why you trust your instincts even when they're wrong, why you believe you understand the world better than you actually do. And unless System 2 steps in to slow things down, you'll keep making bad decisions without even knowing it. So how exactly does System 1 trick you, and what can you do about it? Let's dive into the cognitive biases, the invisible forces that control your thinking. Your brain is a master illusionist. It doesn't just process information, it distorts it, bends it, reshapes it into something that feels true, even when it's not. And the most dangerous part? You don't even realize it's happening. These distortions are called cognitive biases, mental shortcuts your brain takes to save time, reduce effort, and make decisions faster. Most of the time, they're useful. But when they go wrong, they lead to systematic errors, bad investments, irrational fears, poor decisions, and misplaced trust. And these errors are not random. They're predictable. They happen to everyone, no matter how smart, educated, or experienced you are. Imagine walking into a store and you see a luxury watch priced at $5,000, too expensive. But then right next to it, there's a discounted watch for $1,500. Suddenly, $1,500 doesn't seem so bad. But here's the trick. That first price, $5,000, was just an anchor. It planted a number in your mind, making $1,500 seem reasonable, even though it's still expensive. Retailers do this all the time. High original prices, fake discounts, was $100, now only $49.99. These numbers don't reflect real value. They just manipulate your perception. And it's not just shopping. Negotiations, salaries, real estate, everything is anchored to the first number you see. Think you're immune? Try this. Guess the population of Argentina. Now, before I tell you, let me plant a number, 30 million. Got your guess? Now, if I had said 120 million instead, your guess would have been higher, even though the real number is about 45 million. This is how anchoring warps your sense of reality without you even realizing it. What's more dangerous, sharks or vending machines? You probably think sharks, right? Because we hear shark attack stories all the time. The media loves them. They're dramatic, they're terrifying. But here's reality. Vending machines kill more people than sharks every year. Your brain doesn't calculate probability logically. It relies on what's easily available in memory. If something is memorable, shocking, or recent, it feels more common than it actually is. This is why people fear plane crashes but not car accidents, even though cars are way deadlier. It's also why investors panic sell after a market dip, why people overestimate crime rates, and why everyone suddenly thinks they're an epidemiologist during a pandemic. If you only rely on what's easiest to recall, you'll make decisions based on emotion, not reality. Meet Tom. He's quiet, wears glasses, loves books, and prefers to stay indoors. Is Tom more likely to be a librarian or a farmer? Most people say librarian, but this is a trap. The real question isn't who Tom resembles, it's which group is statistically larger. And there are way more farmers than librarians. Your brain ignores statistics and jumps straight to stereotypes. It assumes if something looks like a category, it must belong to that category. This bias is why people misjudge professions, fall for scams, and get fooled by seemingly trustworthy faces. Your brain fills in the gaps with assumptions, whether they're true or not. Let me ask you a question. How well do you understand how a toilet works? Most people say pretty well. But if I asked you to draw a diagram and explain it step by step, you'd probably realize you don't know as much as you thought. This is overconfidence bias, the illusion that we know more than we actually do. CEOs predict their own company's growth and fail spectacularly. Gamblers believe they're on a winning streak when it's just luck. People take on projects thinking they'll finish in half the time and then miss every deadline. Your brain overestimates its abilities because admitting ignorance feels uncomfortable. The solution? Always assume you know less than you think you do. Imagine I offer you a gamble, a 50% chance to win $100, a 50% chance to lose $100. Would you take it? Most people say no. Even though the math is fair, the pain of losing feels way worse than the joy of winning. This is loss aversion. Your brain is wired to fear losses more than it values gains. This is why people refuse to sell bad stocks, why gamblers chase losses, why investors pull out of the market too early. Loss aversion makes you cling to the past, avoid risks, and hold on to bad decisions far longer than you should. And it doesn't just affect money, it affects relationships, careers, and life choices. Your brain is not built for truth, it's built for survival. And that means it lies to you constantly. It anchors you to arbitrary numbers. It fears the wrong things. It stereotypes without checking reality. It overestimates its own knowledge. It clings to losses instead of cutting them. And the worst part? It does all of this while making you feel like you're being completely rational. So how do you fight back? You slow down. You engage System 2. You question your gut reactions. Because when you recognize these biases, you stop being their victim. And that is how you take back control. Now let's talk about one of the biggest biases of all, the illusion that you understand the world better than you actually do. Imagine you're offered a choice, a guaranteed $100 in your pocket, a 50-50 gamble. Flip a coin and you either win $200 or get nothing. Which do you choose? Most people take the sure $100, even though mathematically, the gamble has the same expected value. Now let's flip the scenario. A guaranteed loss of $100. A 50-50 gamble. Flip a coin and you either lose $200 or lose nothing. This time, most people take the gamble. But why? The risk is the same in both cases. The math hasn't changed. So why do we play it safe with gains, but take reckless risks with losses? This is prospect theory, a psychological model developed by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, and it reveals something deeply irrational about human nature. Losses hurt twice as much as equivalent gains feel good. This is called loss aversion, and it shapes nearly every decision you make, without you even realizing it. Picture yourself at a casino. You win $50. Feels good, right? But now imagine losing $50. That sting, that frustration, it lingers much longer than the joy of winning ever could. Your brain is not built for maximizing gains. It's built for minimizing losses. It's an ancient survival mechanism. In the wild, losing food, shelter, or status could mean death. So evolution made sure that losses trigger a much stronger emotional response than gains. In the modern world, this bias still runs the show, but now it leads to terrible financial decisions, bad investments, and fear-driven choices. Investors hold on to bad stocks for too long because selling means admitting defeat. Companies refuse to abandon failing projects because they've already poured money in. People won't switch careers even when they're unhappy because they fear losing stability. People refuse to walk away after losing money, thinking they must win it back. Lottery players double down after losing tickets, even though the odds never change. People stay in bad relationships because the thought of losing time feels unbearable. You hesitate to throw out old clothes, useless gadgets, or outdated ideas because you've already invested in them. It's why we say, I've already spent so much time on this, I might as well keep going. But here's the truth. The past is a sunk cost. Clinging to losses only makes them worse. Instead of focusing on what you'll lose, focus on what you'll gain. If you leave a bad job, you're not losing stability, you're gaining freedom. If you sell a bad stock, you're not admitting defeat, you're preventing further losses. Ask yourself, will this loss still matter in 5 years? Most of the time it won't. System 1 reacts emotionally to loss. But if you engage System 2, you can override the impulse to cling to losing decisions. Before making a choice, step back, run the numbers, and ask yourself, what would a completely rational person do? Your brain is wired to protect you from loss, but sometimes that instinct traps you instead. It keeps you holding on to the past instead of moving forward. It makes you cling to bad decisions instead of learning from them. It tricks you into thinking that quitting is failure, when sometimes it's the smartest thing you can do. So the next time you find yourself afraid to let go, remember, losing something small is sometimes the price of winning something bigger. Now let's talk about one of the biggest lies your brain tells you, the illusion that you understand the world better than you actually do. You think you understand the world. You don't. Not completely, not objectively, and certainly not as well as you think you do. Your brain is a master storyteller, constantly weaving narratives to make sense of randomness, filling in the blanks with assumptions, and convincing you that you know why things happen. But here's the truth. Most of what we understand is just an illusion. This is the illusion of understanding, the false belief that you see reality clearly when, in fact, your brain is just connecting dots that may not even exist. Think of every great success story you've ever heard. Steve Jobs was a genius. Elon Musk is changing the world. Michael Jordan had an unstoppable work ethic. These stories make success seem predictable, as if greatness is the result of a specific formula. But here's the problem. For every Steve Jobs, there were 100 equally brilliant minds who never made it. For every Elon Musk, there were others who had vision but failed. Yet, we never hear their stories. Why? Because we only study the winners. This is called survivorship bias, a dangerous mental shortcut that makes us think we understand success when we actually don't. We assume successful people must have done something special, ignoring the role of luck, timing, and external factors. We believe that hard work guarantees success, but we forget about the thousands who worked just as hard and failed. We tell ourselves there's a clear path to wealth, happiness, or fame, when in reality, life is messier than we want to admit. And that's the illusion. We don't see the failures. We don't see the randomness. We only see the highlights. But it doesn't stop there. Your brain doesn't just oversimplify success stories. It oversimplifies people too. Think about someone you admire, a celebrity, a business leader, or even someone you know personally. Now answer this. Do you see them as intelligent, kind, or trustworthy simply because they're successful? If so, you've fallen for the halo effect, the tendency to let one positive trait overshadow everything else. Attractive people are assumed to be smarter. Confident speakers are seen as more competent. A CEO who turned around one company is expected to succeed at everything. But here's the kicker. None of these things are necessarily true. Yet your brain fills in the blanks. It assumes consistency where there is none. This is how charismatic fraudsters gain trust. This is why a well-dressed candidate gets hired over a more qualified one. This is why we idolize celebrities. Assuming their talent means they must also be wise, ethical, or insightful. The halo effect is why first impressions are so powerful and so often misleading. Both the illusion of understanding and the halo effect lead to dangerous mistakes. We overestimate our ability to predict success. We trust people for the wrong reasons. We ignore luck and randomness, thinking we can control everything. And this leads to flawed decisions in business, investing, leadership, and life. We believe the future is more predictable than it is. We judge people too quickly, without enough information. We create false cause and effect stories, convincing ourselves that we understand why things happen, when often we don't. So what's the solution? Recognize that the world is more random than it seems. Most success stories are just that, stories. They're neat, clean explanations for something that was actually messy and unpredictable. Be skeptical of first impressions. When you meet someone new, resist the urge to judge too quickly. Just because someone is confident doesn't mean they're competent. Just because someone is likable doesn't mean they're trustworthy. Always ask, what am I not seeing? If you're studying success, look at the failures. If you're judging a person, ask yourself, am I being influenced by a single trait? If something seems obvious, consider that it might not be. Because the truth is, the world is far more complex than your brain wants it to be. And the sooner you accept that, the smarter your decisions will be. Now, let's talk about something even more deceptive, how your memories lie to you. Because believe it or not, your brain isn't just bad at understanding reality. It's also terrible at remembering it correctly. Think back to the last time you went on vacation. Now answer this. Do you remember every moment? Of course not. Your brain doesn't store memories like a recording device. Instead, it filters, distorts, and reconstructs them, leaving you with a highly edited highlight reel, one that is often deeply misleading. You don't remember the entire experience. You remember the most intense moment, good or bad, and how it ended. This is the peak end rule, and it controls how you remember life. Imagine you're watching a movie. For the first 90 minutes, it's incredible, gripping, exciting, unforgettable. But in the last 5 minutes, the ending is a disaster. How do you feel about the movie overall? Most people will say, terrible. Not because the whole movie was bad, but because the ending overrides everything else. Now flip it. Imagine a movie that's boring for 90 minutes, but has an amazing, mind-blowing ending. You walk away thinking, that was incredible. Same movie, different memory. Because your brain is biased toward peaks and endings. And this bias doesn't just apply to movies. It shapes your entire life. In a famous study, 2 groups of patients underwent the same painful medical procedure. Group A experienced intense pain for 10 minutes. Group B experienced intense pain for 10 minutes plus 5 extra minutes of mild discomfort. Logically, Group B endured more total pain. But when asked about the experience, Group B reported it as less painful because the ending was less intense. Doctors now use this knowledge in procedures. Ending with less pain makes patients remember the experience as more bearable. Ever wondered why you force yourself to watch the fireworks at the end of a theme park visit, even when you're exhausted? Or why the final night of a vacation feels more important than the rest? Because the ending locks in how you'll remember the entire experience. This is why people plan extravagant final nights on vacations, big grand finales at weddings, and last-minute surprises in relationships. The end is what sticks. If a relationship ends badly, you'll remember it as bad, even if most of it was wonderful. This is why messy breakups distort how we see our exes. The final argument or betrayal colors the entire relationship. Conversely, if a relationship was mostly bad but ended peacefully, you might look back and think it wasn't that bad. Your brain rewrites history based on how things end. Companies obsess over endings because they shape customer memories. Hotels leave chocolates on the pillow on the last night. Luxury brands focus on the final moments of a transaction. A waiter who gives a free dessert at the end of a meal gets a bigger tip. People don't remember the entire experience. They remember how they felt at the end. If you're planning an event, trip, or experience, make the final moments memorable. If you're leading a team or project, end meetings on a high note. If you're telling a story, make sure the last impression is powerful. If something painful is unavoidable, ease the ending to make it feel better in hindsight. If you're going through a tough time, find ways to close it with a sense of growth or resolution. Just because something ended badly doesn't mean the whole thing was bad. Just because something ended well doesn't mean it was great. Your memories are not the full story. They're just what your brain decided to keep. So the next time you're reflecting on an experience, ask yourself, am I remembering the whole thing? Or just the peak and the end? Now let's talk about why your brain makes terrible financial decisions and why it's more afraid of losing money than excited about gaining it. Your brain is an incredible machine, fast, powerful, efficient, but it's not built for truth. It's built for speed, survival, and shortcuts. It makes snap judgments before checking the facts. It jumps to wrong conclusions and convinces you they're right. It fears losing more than it loves winning. It distorts memories, decisions, and emotions, all while making you feel like you're being completely rational. But here's the good news. Once you see the tricks, you can stop falling for them. Your brain loves fast answers, but fast answers are often biased, emotional, and incomplete. If you're making a big decision, pause. Step back. Think it through. If something feels obvious, question it. What if you're missing key information? Before jumping to conclusions, ask, what else could be true? The best decisions aren't made in System 1. They're made when you engage System 2, your logical, deliberate thinking mode. Get comfortable with being wrong. Your brain hates admitting mistakes. It would rather defend a bad decision than change its mind. But the smartest people aren't the ones who are always right. They're the ones who realize when they're wrong, fast. Before arguing your point, ask, what if I'm wrong? Before dismissing new ideas, ask, what would it take to change my mind? If new evidence contradicts what you believe, update your beliefs. Changing your mind isn't a weakness, it's a superpower. Your brain is easily manipulated by the first number it sees. When negotiating, be the first to set a number. Before accepting a price, ask, is this number based on real value or just an anchor? Don't compare random options. Compare against what actually matters. Whoever controls the anchor controls the decision. Make sure it's you. Reframe losses as gains. Your brain fears loss more than it values gain, but you can flip the script. Instead of thinking, if I leave this job, I'll lose stability. Try, if I leave this job, I'll gain freedom and opportunity. Instead of, if I sell this bad investment, I'll lose money. Try, if I sell now, I'll stop losing even more. The way you frame a decision determines how your brain reacts to it. Beware of first impressions. Your brain judges people in seconds and often gets it wrong. Just because someone is confident doesn't mean they're competent. Just because someone is charismatic doesn't mean they're trustworthy. Just because someone looks successful doesn't mean they are. Slow down. Look deeper. Question first impressions before they become final opinions. Redefine success and failure. Most people think success is predictable, but it's not. We see the winners, but not the thousands who failed. We assume hard work guarantees success, but luck and timing play a bigger role than we admit. If you judge success only by the outcome, you'll misunderstand what really drives it. The real secret? Learn from both wins and losses. A failed business isn't a wasted effort, it's experience. A rejected job application isn't failure, it's feedback. A bad decision isn't proof you're dumb, it's proof you're learning. The most successful people aren't the ones who never fail. They're the ones who fail, learn, adapt, and keep going. Your brain is powerful, but it's not always right. It rushes when it should slow down. It clings to losses when it should let go. It believes it understands more than it actually does. But now you know the tricks. And when you see the tricks, you stop falling for them. So the next time your brain tries to trap you with a bias, a false belief, or an emotional reaction, pause. Engage system 2. Ask yourself, am I really thinking, or is my brain just reacting? Because when you start questioning your own thoughts, you stop being their prisoner. And that's how you take back control.